listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio, man. We are here once again. We have an amazing show line for y'all today, man. We have an amazing author, motivational speaker, and also personal development leadership coach. He's the founder of Big Bold Brave. He is also the author of the book, Big Bold Brave. And we're going to learn all about that amazing book. But first and foremost, I want to welcome Clint Hatton to the show. I know you're busy, man, but I'm appreciative of you being with us today, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, Shamaya. Thank you, man. I sure appreciate you having me on and definitely looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, man. So before we jump into the book, Big Bold Brave, How to Live Courageously in a Risky World, kind of give the audience a little bit of better picture of your background, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I love the question, who are you? And I used to answer it differently years ago. Like a lot of people, I'd just give people a list of all these different things that I did, but that has changed for me. So, who I am, I'm someone who really values my marriage first above everything. Well, I have a relationship with God. I should say that first. But, as far as just as a person, my relationship with my wife, we've been married almost 20 years come April. And so that's been a huge piece for me. I really value being a great husband and put a lot of effort into that. Same thing with my boys. I have 3 boys, one that passed away early, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But they're my pride and joy as well. So I'm also someone who, considers myself not a perfect father by any stretch, but I'm a good dad. I'm very intentional and take that role, that responsibility very seriously. And it's ultimately, the 2 top things that I want to be known for is that I was a great husband. I was a great dad. Behind that, a great friend. And then everything else kind of falls after that, in my opinion.
And with that said, your book is, I think everyone should go check it out, Big Bold Brave. And today's show title is going to be Eating Fear for Breakfast. And we're going to learn why, because fear is all around us. Wherever you look, you don't have to worry about it ever getting to your block, because if it's not there now, just wait a little bit while it'll probably come pretty soon. So kind of touch on fear, because you do mention that in your book as well. So how do we get to eat fear for breakfast?
Yeah, well, writing the book was partly how I decided I needed to learn how to eat fear for breakfast, and that's really no joke, because you said it so well. Fear is just lurking around every corner. We face some form of fear probably every day, and then it's really just a question of how do we allow fear to dictate how we're going to live our life. And so for me, the reason why I decided to write it and the inspiration behind why I decided to write it is my oldest son, Gabriel, who at 16 years old, he had wanted to pursue being a licensed pilot, which he had that dream since he was like 8 years old. And at 16, he soloed for the very first time, which was before he even had a driver's license. So I want you, Shemai, picture that for a minute. Think about the average kid and how much fear is involved just getting into a car and you're with your driver instructor, probably even worse if it's your parents, right? And so there's a fear to that. And here's this kid who's getting in a plane, and he did for a little bit, obviously, with a flight instructor first, but then at 16 years old, jumps in by himself and just goes for it. And so, he was someone who, in my opinion, just refused to allow fear to dictate whether or not he could fulfill his dreams, And I like to use the phrase eating fear for breakfast, because breakfast just speaks to an everyday thing, right? Like most of us, some people intermittent fast, I get it, but breakfast is something that's a daily thing. And that's what for you is that we're going to have to learn how to eat fear every single day. And sometimes it's a small fear and sometimes it's a big one, But he jumped in that plane and he made it happen. And then by the time he was 17, he actually became a licensed pilot, which is the youngest you can be. And so he was just crushing fear and just going for it and making bold moves and what I call living courageously. And ultimately, what would happen is just shy of his 18th birthday, he was about 3 months shy. This is September 23rd of 2019. And 2019 is going to be important with where we go with this as well, talking about fear. But on 23rd, he took a friend home to the University of Arkansas, which is a few hours north of where I am here in the Dallas area, and dropped her off safely. And then on his return trip, he ran into an unexpected weather system. The NTSB, who does all the investigations on that type of thing, ruled that he suffered from the same thing that Kobe Bryant's pilot. Of course, we all remember when Kobe Bryant passed away with many others in that helicopter crash. Gabriel suffered from the same thing that Kobe's pilot did, which is called spatial disorientation. So basically, you think you're flying right side up, you're not, or you think you're flying up, you're flying down. And he flew into a mountainside and he lost his life, and, obviously hugely impacting, changed our lives forever in an instant. There's a hole there that will never be filled by another human being. But, through the grieving and through just coping with the pain as a family, one of the commitments we made early the very first morning after his crash was that, if we were going to really honor his life, then we need to start living the way he did. And he was really fearless. He really was, and not that, we all have some natural fears, right? He was afraid of snakes and spiders and stuff. Just like he was afraid of, as handy as he was afraid of touching car batteries. There was something about electricity he always freaked about. But, he lived courageously. He didn't let fear get in the way of chasing his dreams. And I realized that I had. And then, I said 2019 is important. We all know what happened a few months later. COVID hit the world, right? And so, our first couple of years before I wrote the book of grieving, the entire world was now suffering from various forms of fear and loss and, maybe losing hope that their dreams even mattered. And, is the world just, going to heck? And am I ever going to be able to live out my dream? And I just got, and this is not a political statement at all, I'm just saying I got tired of just all the constant fear being put out by all kinds of media, both sides, if you want to throw in the politics thing, just fear everywhere. And so that's why I was inspired to write this book, to talk about how we've been able to move forward with our lives despite a really difficult loss, and how, his life inspired me. And I also include the stories of 4 amazing human beings in it that are also great examples of people that what I call live big, bold, and brave and eat fear for breakfast and just have done amazing things. And so, that was the reason for writing the book. That's my why. I just want to reach people. I want to be able to encourage people to just not give in to those fears.
You listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest for today, Clint Hatton. Go to his website, BigBoldBrave.us, and also get his book is on the site as well. It's Big Bold Brave, How to Live Courageously in a Risky World. And you touched on it. I mean, it's like storm after storm. You had that situation with your son, but also, COVID-19 pandemic, and everyone has to be isolated for a good while. And even today, speed up to today is still, I guess you can say, fear being pushed out and different outlets for people to either be consumed by it or be inspired by it. And that leads to my next question. Also in the book, you talk about despite all that's going on with your life and circumstances, you still hold on to hope and you remain grateful, and somehow you find joy somewhere. So kind of touch on that with the audience.
Yeah, well, for me, a lot of that, has to do with just some foundational things that have been established in my life. I became a man of faith when I was about 31 years old. So I was not like a church kid. I wasn't somebody in search of religion. But at 31 years old is when I had an experience at a church that I just accepted an invitation to go finally one day from friends who had been hounding me. And I went. And so that began my journey in a relationship with God, which, I know there's listeners out there that don't feel that way and don't believe that way. And And, I recognize that and certainly don't try to push my beliefs on anybody, but having faith in God, having some, faith in something greater than me, the belief that it's actually a relationship and that God is interested in my life, those are very foundational things that have certainly helped me tremendously over the years. Because like you said, I mean, this blow with Gabriel, when you lose a child, there's really not much to compare that with. And I'm not in any way diminishing any other kind of loss. Any, especially losing a loved one of any kind. My parents were in their 80s when they passed away. They both weren't very healthy down the stretch. So it was, we were grateful, if you could say it that way, that they weren't suffering anymore. And that's a loss too. But there is definitely something unique about losing a child. It kind of rocks your whole world in the sense that, we all kind of grow up knowing that no one's guaranteed tomorrow, but you just have these basic expectations that you're going to live a long life. And if you decide you want to get married and have children, that you're certainly going to outlive them. And then you're going to get to see them get married and, just whatever your dreams are for your kids. So, that was something that with my faith, I think there's two things, Shemaiah, that were huge in terms of coping with this situation that we're dealing with now, because it's only been a little over 3.5 years ago. And that is, first, that I have faith in a higher power and that he has a love for me, which I already said. But the second would be, I was a pastor for 17 years up until just actually the beginning of this year, when I launched fully out into my speaking and personal development. And I have more books that I'm going to write as well. And, just watching people, I was a mentor and a coach during all that time and worked with a lot of marriages, a lot of crisis marriages, a lot of people who had also suffered loss or ended up in divorce and those types of things. And so just seeing the way fear works and the way it creeps into our lives and the way it frames the way we think about our present and the way, well, for that matter, even the way we think about our past and the way we think about our future, it bleeds into everything. And if you're not careful, it will crush you. And so I had those experiences as well, being able to help people and see how fear and loss could really affect someone in a very negative way and cause them, to sometimes get a divorce from their spouse, sometimes just see their family implode. So, faith and trust that there's something greater than me, definitely a big key.
Once again, listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest, Clint Hatton, and go to his website, BigBoldBrave.us. Man, today we're eating fear for breakfast. And I think you probably listen to this episode almost like taking a shower. You just got to keep listening, man. And it's going to help you kind of see things differently. And the reason why I say that is because also in your book, you mentioned about develop your character to love and serve others and live a fulfilling life. And everything you said so far kind of paints the picture of this theme for the show and this show called I'm Your Focus. The simple idea is that every day may not be able to see clarity, but that allows us to readjust the lens. So touch on that for the audience.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. I have a different phrase that I use a lot, but yours fits perfectly. And for me, it's just, recalibration. When we made that decision on the couch that morning, because that's literally what happened. We were sitting on the couch when my two younger boys, who at that time were 9 and 14, came out, and I had to give them the news of Gabriel passing away. And we made this commitment together. And, that, Shemaiah, that didn't take away our pain. That didn't take away that we had future challenges and still do with just dealing with the pain of loss and just life in and of itself. I almost lost my boys are now 18 and 13. We almost lost our 18-year-old just a year and a half, 2 years, actually about 2 years after Gabriel passed away. He was in a horrific car accident. The car was completely destroyed. If I were to show you pictures, you would go, that person doesn't walk out of that alive. And he not only walked out of it alive, he walked out of it with just one little scratch, which even the paramedics and police on the scene were blown away. And there's been other, things too along the way. So, you have to learn how to calibrate, because fear is going to affect you. And you're going to have days when you walk in much greater courage than others, and there may be times where you may have moments where you're feeling very courageous and you can eat fear for breakfast. And the next thing you know, 2 hours later, you're confronted with something completely different. And it kind of sets you back a little bit, So yeah, reframing, recalibrating, just, reminding yourself of who you want to be, the type of person that you want to be. None of us set out to be cowards, right?
Right.
I mean, Shemaiah, those are fighting words, right?
Oh yeah, those. Yeah.
Yeah, to a man, those are fighting words.
Yep.
And so none of us set out to be, hey, I think I'm going to be the most prolific coward that's ever been known on the face of this planet. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
But we find areas of our life. So, even the idea of writing this book, for example, obviously you heard my why. I had a really big why. And so I was motivated, but that didn't change that I was, fearful. I definitely had to fight the fear that what if I'm not good enough? So many people deal with that. That's their greatest fear. It's just, what if I'm not good enough? What if I can't write? What if I write this book and nobody wants to read it? What if? And so that was a very real thing. I'm not superhuman by any stretch. I'm just like anybody else, But again, when you have a greater why, when you know why you want to accomplish something, and I believe when your focal point is the type of person you want to be, not necessarily what you want to do, because we can do a lot of different things, but that character you talked about and just becoming that person, when that becomes our focal point, then now something to help you defeat those enemies of fear. And so for me, and this is what I think is a really simple way, Shemaiah, I don't mean to make this sound like it's just so easy that from after this conversation having that no one should ever fear again. But when those why questions come, I just like to flip the script. So I began to talk to myself and tell myself a different story. It's like, what if I can write? What if I'm actually really good at it? What if I end up helping 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people? What if it turns into a new career for me and I really love it? I began to flip that, because that's what happens. We think of all these what ifs that are going to go against us. And that's how fear gets its claws in us. But the reality of it is we're fearing stuff that's never even happened.
Yeah.
And may never happen.
We just have a good imagination. That's the problem. Our imaginations are too great sometimes, and before we know it, we have a whole movie played out that hasn't even aired in any theaters. And,
yeah, exactly.
And that goes to my next question, is because you talked about, I like how you talked about like your why, and talking so differently than what the current circumstance may be, as almost like a guiding system to get you to the place that you are striving to be. And you really can't do that without self-awareness. So touch with the audience how important it is to be self-aware of what the situation really is, not the fairy tale or, smoke and mirrors in your mind, but the reality of the situation. How do we become more self-aware of what's really happening in our lives so for we can actually move forward?
Yeah. Well, the way I'm going to answer that right this second is, this isn't going to be super popular, but I think this is the truth. It's just sometimes we need to be at our lowest low, or we need to get really punched in the face to wake us up a little bit. Now, that's not always going to be necessary, but that's largely what happened to me, and here it's not like by the time my son passed away, I was 54 years old. I've done some things. I've influenced quite a few people over the years and have helped a lot of people. So it's not like I hadn't done anything, but I had allowed fear to keep me from really, truly chasing after some of my other dreams and stuff that I hadn't tried yet. And again, kind of getting out of that cowardly mode in those areas. And so, I think one of the things that death can cause is it can cause you to really take a hard look at everything in your life. Because I think we're all aware, Shemai. I don't think everyone is aware that we're not going to live forever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that, hey, I'm going to die someday.
And gravity works.
Yeah. And virtually no one thinks, and it's going to be really soon, right? Unless you're, old, really old. So we always kind of just push it out there. But when you have a death like this so close to you, and again, it doesn't have to be a child, but certainly when it is a child, it caused us to look under every rock of our life. And so that included, how do we spend our time on a daily basis? Who are the people that we give most of our time to? Are these people that we mutually grow and we mutually are excited about each other's dreams and visions and push each other? Or are there people in our lives that just kind of drain and take? And, so we looked at all those things. But part of that for me was just looking at where my fears were. And so in that process of realizing that there truly is like no promise for tomorrow. I mean, you and I aren't guaranteed after we get off this call, for that matter. And so I just realized that I wanted to become the type of person that did their best to try and make sure that every day mattered. Now, not every day is an amazing day, right? Not every day do I go to bed thinking, wow, I changed the world today. It's not quite like that. But I try to do something productive every day that takes me closer to my dreams. And part of my dream is inspiring people, and more than inspiring them, but getting them to realize that they have everything in them to become an inspiration. That's really, what I'm all about. So, but if I could, do you mind if I jump just topics just a tiny bit? It's still related to what we're talking about.
Oh, you good.
What I want to jump in is just the media. One thing we have to recognize when we're talking about, who the type of person that we want to become and overcoming fear and chasing your dreams and stuff like that. The media learned long ago, and I'm not going to bore you with statistics, but there's been many studies done on this and the effects, neuroscientists and different brain science data out there of the effects of fear over our lives. And what's crazy is it's become very clear, and media learned this a long time ago, that for whatever reason, we are more easily attracted to fear, to the point where that's why they use fear to sell. They use fear to sell every single day. They use fearful taglines and headlines. And I mean, people get paid big bucks now to write headlines that create some form of fear. Like, I need to know this information, or I need to be worried about something. So maybe I better check this out. And so, media perpetuates fear all day long. And the scariest part of all, and I know I may not be on video right now, but I'm holding my iPhone in my hand. The biggest problem is we now carry the greatest propaganda creating mechanism in the world, because it's in our hands all the time. Uh-huh. So whether it's social media, whether it's, watching the news, whatever it is, they feed on feeding us fear. And so that's something we have to pay attention to. I'm not saying go live in a cave, and I still carry my phone with me, and I still occasionally watch the news, although very little. But you need to watch how much you're ingesting that kind of stuff as well, if you're going to be the type of person that you really want to be, and to fulfill your dreams, and to be someone who is mostly fearless.
It's interesting to say that, because one thing I learned, when it comes to like chasing your dream, whatever, is that the dream itself is easy. I mean, who doesn't want to see the finished product of your dreams? Everyone wants to see that. That's the most, fulfilling thing about dream, because when you see something that is totally better than your current situation, who doesn't want to see that? But the hardest part in chasing dreams is the construction mode. We have to build every day. Like, we're not seeing the end result right away, but we get a glimpse of what that final dream could look like, or could be. So for the audience, why is it important for us listening to this to also understand that hate to say it, but it's a golden phrase. Rome wasn't built in one day. So don't think that your dream is going to be finished by tomorrow. Like, you listen to this show, your dream ain't be, finished to look at until 10 years from now, or maybe the next generation. But why it's important to not give too much attachment of seeing the final result versus enjoying the process.
Yeah, that's such a profound question. It really is, and you're so right. For me, instead of trying to answer it per se, I'm just gonna give your listeners how I've approached this, because you're so right. We can easily quit really quickly if it seems like we're failing and we're not getting there soon enough. And so, to your point, the idea that this life is a journey versus a destination, I think, is one really key mindset to begin with. And it's funny because, I mentioned earlier, I was a pastor for 17 years. I've done a lot of preaching, and I've certainly been around a lot of preachers. And, in the church in particular, we love to talk about destiny. And, I'm not against the word, and it's okay if you bring it in. But I think the problem with it is destiny speaks to this point in time where everything is now perfect. You now have everything that you want. You're now everything you're supposed to be, right? Like, it's this thing out there that if I just keep reaching for it, eventually I'll get there. And when you study millionaires and billionaires and people that, from the outside, we look at them and we see them as very successful, which typically in our culture, that just means they're making a lot of money somehow, right? But when we look at those people, often they are the most miserable on the planet. And the reason for that is because they were destination oriented. They thought the money, they thought the cars, they thought the houses and the vacation houses and the jets and, the fame and all these things, that once they reach that destination, now they're going to be happy. And the truth is, they were never happy, and they've always been miserable. And they're even more miserable in a lot of cases because now they've gotten to what they thought was a pinnacle, and they don't even like their own life, And I think a lot of that is because they're destination oriented, not journey oriented. And I think when you understand that, and when you begin to look at your life as just that, and I just focus on, hey man, can I get better today? Or can I do something today that is productive or has the potential to help me take one more step towards fulfilling the kind of life that I want? When you do that, I think it positions you much better to be healthier along the way and not have such highs and such lows. You're probably going to be a little more steady. But I think, your question is just so profound, because most people don't live life that way. And so it's really easy to quit long before they actually strike gold, if I could say it that way. So to me, that's one really big, not simple, but I'll say it this way. It's a simple concept, but it takes work to execute it, to be just focused on the day-to-day journey. And I really believe, as part of that is focusing on, we've talked about this a little bit, on who you want to become. I have an exercise that I do with people now, and it at first is probably going to sound a little morbid, but it's okay. And that is, when we see people pass away, right, and we go, and hopefully if we go to a funeral or we're watching it online, it's truly a celebration of their life, right? And so people give what they call a eulogy, right? And it just tells the story about who that person was to them or to people. And man, why not write it today? Why not write how you want to be remembered as a person, the impact that you want to have, the way you want people to feel for having had the interaction with you, that they would feel better off for having known you, rather than, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, maybe you've got the houses, maybe you've got the cars and the money. And the only thing people remember in your eulogy is, yeah, he had a bunch of stuff, but he was a complete jerk, and he was a terrible family man, and he was divorced a couple of times, and he wasn't really a great dad either, fill in the blank. So to me, those are a couple of key things that can really put you on a great track for a successful journey.
Once again, this is Refocus Radio, talking to our guest, Clint Hatton. And man, today's topic, eating fear for breakfast. I think, fear, there's a quote I always share with people. And it's funny because I read this quote when I was a sophomore in high school. And it was by Blaise Pascal. And this is the same quote that I put in my wallet before I walked the stage at University of Toledo. So this quote has a lot of weight to inspiration in my life. Blaise Pascal once said, "In faith, there's enough light for those who want to believe, but also enough shadows to blind those who don't." And that's a long, extended version of Henry Ford's "Believe you can, believe you can't, you're right." But he just went in some detail. And the reason why I kept that quote with me, and at some point in college, I put in my wallet for inspiration, it's because, everyone has a story. And my short story, I won't bore you with it, but basically, in college, I was, slipping, not focused, not, wanting to pay attention and mess around. And, almost lost the opportunity to stay in college. So I remember that quote from sophomore in high school. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put this in my wallet and I'm going to read it as a reminder, as a checkpoint. So no matter how my day went, that was the last thing I read to keep me going. And I feel like that's the same thing in life. Like, you eat fear for breakfast. Yeah, there can be some days you're going to be pushing that to the side. You're going to be fasting for some time, whatever. But the point is, you don't keep pushing fear away. At some point in life, you have to learn to embrace it and say, you know what? Fear ain't going nowhere. It's not asking me, hey, Shemai, you want me to come tomorrow or you want me to skip till next year? It don't even make an announcement. It just drops. And I feel like when we understand that, we have a better opportunity to eat fear for breakfast and get through the day because we know that it is there. And because we know it's there, we no longer have to be afraid of it the way we used to be. Fear is natural, but staying in fear is not natural.
That is so good, man. I saw that quote on your site too, and it's just such a powerful statement, man. Everything you just said, and if I could just jump on that for a second, natural fear. I do believe that, and I'm actually right there with you, that there are clearly natural fears, right? Like I tell a story, actually ran into literally two bears in the woods late at night on a lake. That's going to kick in that real fear, fight or flight mechanism that we were created with, right? Mm-hmm. But where we get off track is when we allow unnatural fears to control our lives. And the unnatural fears are the ones where we're telling stories about ourselves that don't even exist. We're telling ourselves we're not enough. We're telling ourselves we don't have what it takes to get a degree. We don't have what it takes to start a business. I should be afraid. I'm totally afraid to go speak in public because, what if people think I'm an idiot? What if people think that I can't speak well? All those are what I call fears because they're projecting a negative outcome out of something that has never happened and may never happen, right? And there's the distinguishing line. But I love what you just said because to me, it's a huge key to eating fear for breakfast. And that is, you carried that quote with you. That's powerful, man. And I don't know how often you showed that to people. That may have been something really private or maybe not. But I think what boldness you had, recognize that this quote really means something for me. That's what Big Bold Brave became for us. That phrase, Big Bold Brave, that turned into my book, that was a phrase that we used early on from the morning of after Gabriel passed away, that's how we were going to live, right? That is so key. And then I think a second thing that would be huge for your audience is recognizing that we need others too. Yeah. So I think it's beautiful that you did that. But I'll bet you haven't succeeded without a whole bunch of other people being a part of your life and feeding your courage and your dreams and goals, like me. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because the whole show, the whole idea started at a local barbershop. And the founder, he's awesome. The main reason why I'm even interviewing, I guess you can say famous people. I'd say they're awesome people. I pinch myself sometimes when I interview some people, but that pinch kind of goes away because it's like, all right, at the end of the day, they're normal people. But the only difference is that they chose their path and they're living it. And that's, I believe, after all the people I interviewed. Like, I remember the very first time I interviewed the first multimillionaire. He was a local business guy in San Antonio. And he happened to, not trying to be political, but he happened to be working in the White House with Mr. T. And a lot of people don't understand, but the process of success it doesn't look anything like your current situation. Because it hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
And that's the point. So if success doesn't look great, it's probably because you're still under construction or you haven't started the construction process. And the more you just get at it every day, it's better to do 2 push-ups today versus 0 for 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset that you have to have, because that's what I've learned over the time after talking to all these brilliant minds like yourself. It's the same thread. These people, they get up and they go after it every day. It's like Michelangelo. I mean, I got so many quotes because I kind of study philosophy, but Michelangelo once said, I carved the marble until I set the angel free.
Oh, yeah.
And people got to do that with their life. What is your angel? Is it this job? Is it this career? Is it going back to school? Is it, being more healthy? What is your angel? And if you stop chipping that marble, then it's going to look like, a failure. But when I say failure, I'm just saying the failure of you acting and putting yourself in position to succeed. We put ourselves out of position because we are not doing our part. And when we neglect that for a long time catches up. And then you all of a sudden don't have enough time to do the things you wish you could have done.
Yeah. I actually heard a quote. I wish I could remember who it was, but they were actually quoting something out of a study that was done. And the study was when they challenged people on what regrets they had in life, the number one far and away type of regret was stuff people never tried, not regrets of something they did or a failure. Isn't that amazing?
And that's why you got to be big, bold, and brave, and go get that book. Go to BigBoldBrave.us and eat fear for breakfast every day. I think people should listen to this. I might have to have you on again, man, because I think
pleasure, man.
This is a great conversation that can kind of get people off of the, we just call them major outlets, if you will, because like you said earlier, not everything, but a lot of things today is just pushed for, us to be afraid of someone or something or whatever it is. I mean, you look at when I grew up in the 90s, I'm born in 89, but I was growing up in the 90s. My parents did a great job shielding me and my siblings from all the fear stuff on media and just, whatever circumstances or environments or whatever. And I feel like that's the way we have to be every day. When we go do what we do, be the best that you can be. Because that's part of eating fear for breakfast. It's saying, okay, instead of me being afraid of failing today, I haven't started living right now, my moments right now. So my day is still fresh. So why not change the script like you said earlier in the show and say, all right, today, okay, first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Like, stop going to everybody, hey, Billy, what do you think I should be doing in my life? Hey, Susie, what do you think? Like, sometimes we just got to go in seasons where we are just focused on our path and not so much on everything else. Because maybe we're not getting to where we're supposed to be in life. It's because we're so worried about what everyone else is accomplishing. And someone said last week on my show, or a couple of weeks ago, that you got to stop at looking at everyone's middle and you need to start in your beginning.
Mm.
Because
That's good.
we always get discouraged when, it's our turn to start the process, but then we get mad or discouraged because we feel like we're terrible because no one's supporting us or no one knows me or no one blah, blah, blah. But you look at someone who's been doing it for 40 years, it's like, well, of course they're doing great. They've got 40
40-year
years.
overnight success, right?
Yeah. You started like 40 seconds ago. So, of course, you're going to have a little struggle. And I think the better we can embrace those struggles, the more we can eat the fear. Because God said that don't despise small beginnings. If you can hold on to that, then fear is not as bad as it seems.
That's exactly right, man. That's so good. Yeah, and I think that's why, I love you brought up your parents. Your parents were a catalyst for that, right? And maybe not everybody listening, it's going to be their parents, but that's why it's so critical. Like even what we're doing right now, we're just collaborating. We're just having this great conversation. We're giving some people some real stuff, that they can really apply and live by. But it does take others. And, I think there's an enemy of our soul that's always trying to make us feel isolated, like you said a minute ago, and always make us feel like, we're the only ones and nobody pays attention, all that. And it really is just a lie. And the truth is we're in a place now where we have really no excuse to feel alone. People aren't necessarily going to be your best friend or know you on a personal level, but they can listen to your podcast and they can get incredible encouragement and value of stuff out of their life. And they can find mentors, they can find coaches, they can, find new friends. I mean, there's a world out there that is waiting to help us on our journey, especially if we're the type of people that want to help other people on their journey, So I would just say kudos to you for recognizing those things and applying it and living that way. And for any young person listening out there, this 40 seconds, man, that was so good. You may end up being super successful by the time you're 20 years old, but there's still going to be a lot of life to live. So surround yourself to some degree with people that have lived a much longer life and have some other life experiences too, because you're just going to be better for it.
Man, the time where everyone hates leaving the theater is when the credits start going. So, man, what they say, time flies by when you're having too much fun. I know we went over time, but this was too important to, I think it's timely for people to get this little boost of inspiration, because the show is all about story and people's experiences, because without those things, then what are we really doing in life? Like, what are we really doing? If we're just doing selfies on, the feed, I mean, come on. Like, it's right. A little bit more real stuff than that. Like, don't limit yourself to that. And I'll say that to say this: don't limit yourself to the fear. Just because it's out there doesn't mean that you can't survive. See, we want to give fear too much credit and be like, oh, okay, so because of fear, I can't do this. And we give it too much credit. Yeah. Like, we don't even start. And it's like, okay, because of fear, I can't graduate. Okay, because of fear, I can't talk to this person. Okay, because of this fear, I can't. It's just another way to have another excuse. So today, be bold, be big, be bold, and be brave. Go to the website, BigBoldBrave.us. Check out Clint Hatton's book and check out what he's doing. He's doing a lot of things, but I had to have him back on because, man, he's doing more than writing books, man. He has coaching and speaking and all that good stuff. So let's right now, what's the best call to action they can get and support you outside of the book?
Yeah, I think going to the website is probably the best, Shemaiah. There you're going to have some one-stop shopping. And if you want to pick up the book, you can. I do want to point out, because you probably have listeners outside the U.S. too, though. So if you are outside the U.S., just because of shipping craziness, you'll want to go to Amazon or one of the online retailers. It's available everywhere just for the shipping purposes. But the website's a great place to start. And I would encourage them. I started a weekly newsletter. So please sign up for that. It's just once a week. I hate clutter. It's not long. It's just a free coaching tip and a couple other quick things, and just something that's going to change your life every Friday.
Once again, I'm Focus Radio talking to Clint Hatton. Go to his website, BigBoldBrave.us. I want to say thanks again, man. Take your time talking to us today, man.
Oh, thank you, man. I had a blast. We definitely got to do this again.